Hello everyone, I'm Yang Yunsen. Today, I'll be analyzing a game that Stockfish played against Stockfish using the RUY LOPEZ opening, as promised in the previous video, where Stockfish played against Stockfish with the Scotch game. So let's start. White started with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, and a6. As black, I always respond a6 towards the RUY LOPEZ opening, and some viewers might think that why if the bishop is taken and if we take back the bishop, wouldn't that just be a pawn giveaway? But actually, it's not. If you take with the b pawn, it is a pawn giveaway. But if you take with the c pawn, there's an exception. If the knight takes, then the queen will go to d4, and it will not be good. And there's also sometimes where the bishop will go to c5, and the knight will be totally lost. So, of course, Stockfish is an engine, so they know. So the bishop took it, the b pawn took, and it's castled, and black immediately protected the e5 pawn. d4, ex g4, queen x d4. This is all good moves. Queen x. The reason for queen taking d4 instead of the knight is to make the queen more active, as it's already quite happy for a knight right here. If you move the knight into the middle, the pawn might come up. Queen took, and f6 was played. Normally it's to give the knight space and castles, and the white bishop can come up to e6 and give the black bishop escape squares. So bishop to e3. So now it's Stockfish suggested that, but I don't think it's okay, and Stockfish also thinks the move it played is not okay because it just doesn't it just doesn't go well. The bishop will block the queen. So now bishop to e6, as I said previously, knight to d2, and now knight to h6 is a bit confusing. That is what Stockfish suggested, but you can see knight to h6 and will pressurize on the f5 square. So, but if you play f5, the queen will move down. And it's also quite good that your white bishop moved up just now because the rook and the queens are coordinating. So if the queen take, you don't need to take with the king. And you are not able to castle. So yeah, it's a very good move. So now bishop taking, it will have a double pawn, and the pawn structure is very bad now for black. So as I mentioned previously, e5, e5, and either the bishop must take or the pawn must take. So the pawn took, because now black is in a disadvantage and they do not want to trade. Knight took, and this move is quite surprising for me because it opens your king, but also, as you can see, it also strengthens your rook. As you see just now, if you move your rook here or here directly, your king literally will be trapped in the middle, and now the queen and the knight can just come out, attack the king, and that will be a worse situation. So castled, and rook moves to e1. Now, if the knight moves away, it's a discovered attack on the bishop. You can, for example, take the knight, take the pawn, and the opponent cannot take the pawn to answer attack because you'll just take the queen. So Black responded with a5, and rook to e3 is a very rook to e3 um is an accurate move. So it should be a3, or as I mentioned, knight to c6. Actually no, because let's see what the engine suggests. Oh yeah, it's a tactic. So if it doesn't work, because if knight takes c6, it opens up the bishop's lines. So after taking, you must move your queen away. And should you take with the rook, and bishop takes, queen takes, and a free queen is here. So this is an accurate move by Stockfish. And now queen to f6 and knight dc4. I think Stockfish is trying to uh, attack on this bishop and protect at the e5 knight at the same time, because the bishop and queen, I think they're attempting to add more pressure on the piece. And also in the next move, you'll see that the rook will move to f3 to attack the queen. So there must be enough defenders. So the first suggestion was king to h8, because it was a time game. Maybe Stockfish didn't react that fast. So now, for example, if you protect the queen and you move the knight, and then, of course not to that square, maybe back, then you're in uh, a huge disadvantage, as you're forced to trade off the queens. So rook to f3, it correctly attacks the queen. Queen moves to g7, rook to g3, queen to f6, rook to f3, queen to g7, and now knight takes d6. Trading of the rooks can also be a very good idea, because white is up by half a point based on position. So a trade is made, and now it's taken. So of course the queen will grab the pawn, and now the bishop moves to d5 to attack the knight. Notice that the g2 pawn is pinned by the queen, and if the knight doesn't move, he'll be a free. So knight moves to h4, both protecting the g2 pawn and itself. So should there be any move like queen to g5, then you could play, for example, g3. But there is some exception, because it will weaken your white squares. So, okay. So after that, a free pawn was taken, and h3, rook e8, a4, h5, rook d1, queen g7, f3, rook f8, king h2. All these moves are already, it's already a drawn position, so Stockfish just made some more moves, and then white traded off, which definitely confirms the draw. And just a few more moves. Rook d1, rook f4, attempting to attack the a4 pawn. The king moves to f7, takes over here. So over here, you're not if we trade, it will be a disadvantage now, as if the pawn takes, the bishop is supporting, so later the pawn can just come down, and if you ignore, the pawn will go down, promote to a queen. And should you if the pawn comes down, and if you accept, then the bishop will take, and this pawn will fall. So now h5 saved the game as if white takes, it'll break up white's pawn structure. So black will definitely get the lost pawn back one day, and it will be a win. So takes, just a bunch of pawn captures and checks. Pawn takes g4, rook takes c2 check, king e3, rook c3, king d2, rook g3, rook a6. And over here, the game was totally a draw, and the two stockfishes just agreed this position as a draw, although there's still a small advantage. So this is the game that Stockfish played against Stockfish on the RUY opening. So in the next video, we will showcase the infamous yet easy to be tricked England gambit. However, the Stockfish will never fall for the England gambit. So let's see. Goodbye.